Well, I was invited to Prayer Warriors by Leah and Joe Philpott. They asked me to come up and host the event, and I came to discover what the Prayer Warriors program was about and learn new ways to pray and learn about forgiveness.
The main reason I came to Prayer Warriors was simply because I had a friend at church who had come the year before, and she used to always tell us how amazing it was and what an experience it was. So that was initially the main reason why I wanted to come to Prayer Warriors. But since then, leading up to the week to Prayer Warriors, I think my life has got to a stage whereby it's been a battle between balancing everything within my life and my Christian life, at a point where I don't want my Christian life to become a part-time thing and everything else become the main thing in my life. I want my Christian life be my lifestyle and everything a part-time thing. So
I guess I could say it was because of exam season, because I know we all need prayers when exams are coming up, but honestly I came for the spiritual high. I guess in my spiritual life I've been feeling that I've been in a kind of rut lately, and I was just coming to be with like-minded brethren for a weekend to put myself on the right track. And also I know that I usually get just a lot of time away and in prayer when I'm usually here, because I have been coming for the last 4 years. So
I did come because I did want the spiritual high. Recently in my spiritual life, I don't want to say, not to say the same thing as him, but I was in a rut, and it's kind of like a 50-50 thing. For instance, it's like 50% of me wants what God has for me, and 50% wants to hold on to those sins. You know, those sins that you love. And it just got to a point where I knew that here I could get 50% of me wanting to be with God, 50% of me wanting to be all the way in, to up to 60%. So because it's not 50-50 anymore, it's 60-40, I could actually start to get somewhere. And if I actually didn't, and if I don't let it break me, if I don't let what Satan's gonna throw at me break me, then I can get to 70-30. I can keep going to the 90-10. And then from the 99, I can go higher, because at any point, if you go backwards, you could destroy everything that you've done already. But by God's grace, now's the time.
Well, I've never been to Prayer Warriors before, and I've heard of what it is like, and I've seen pictures, I've seen people, and I've heard their experiences of what they've been through and how effective it is in people's life. And I think that kind of persuaded me and influenced me a lot to come and actually experience it myself. That intrigued me. Also because I think another factor that really got to me was the fact that I'm now in my last year of sixth form, and so I thought before I actually properly start my exams, I want to have a season of prayer where I can really get in and ask God to really guide me. And so I thought, what best to start this season of prayer than to come to Prayer Warriors and start here. However, coming here, I have developed other things, such as the idea of forgiveness, which I've learned along the way, that I'm not just here for my exams anymore, but I'm also here to ask God for forgiveness of some things that I might be yielding and holding on to in my life, family things and those sort of things. So yeah, all these things, all these different factors made me come to Prayer Warriors.
I came to Prayer Warriors because I felt like in my spiritual journey I was ready to grow a bit more, and I thought this would be a good opportunity to push me out of my comfort zone with God and learn something new and hopefully take a step closer to God.
I wasn't actually planning to come to Prayer Warriors. It was like a complete accident, but there are no accidents with God, so I know I was meant to be here. So just like I didn't have anything else to do on my bank holiday weekend, so plans fell through, and I was like, I'm gonna go to Prayer Warriors, and here I am.
I think the difference between our forgiveness and God's forgiveness is God's is instantaneous. He doesn't have to think about it. He doesn't have to try and forget. He doesn't have to think, well, does this person really deserve it? Whereas for us, when we forgive, we have to think about all the different stuff that went into the situation that happened. And then we have to still go to God and ask for a willing spirit to forgive. So we're able to see the difference that God can forgive instantly, whereas it takes a little bit more time and effort for us to forgive.
I think the main thing is God's forgiveness is instant. So Christ has already died for our sins, and all we have to do is to come to God in prayer and ask for forgiveness. And when we truthfully ask Him for forgiveness, He immediately forgives us. But I think with us, forgiveness is more of a journey, it's more of a progression, whereby we daily have to kind of learn over time to forgive the person, learn to just accept what's happened, and basically just leave in God's hands. Just like, as the song says, give all our burdens unto Him, and He'll take over. And I think that's something as humans we struggle with. It's completely, laying all our burdens on Christ and, like, for example, forgetting what's happened. So I think for us, the main difference is forgiveness is a journey which we go through, and with the help of Christ, we reach a point where we completely we forget what's happened, whereby we don't continuously bring it up, and we're able to then talk to that person, relate to that person as if nothing happened. But with God, He's able to instantly forgive us when we ask Him for forgiveness.
I think that our forgiveness is so affected by what's already happened in the past. Our memories are the way that we just think about what has happened. But even though our forgiveness is so affected by the past, I think it's hopeful when we look at God's forgiveness, because God's forgiveness doesn't just look at the past and what we've done and how we've hurt Him, but God is looking to the future and how He loves us and how He wants to be able to eventually spend that time with us in His kingdom. That's what He's looking forward to. And with that love that He has for us, and I think with that in mind, He will always forgive us whatever we do.
I also think that with God, to quote a friend, Lebo, who made this point this morning, he was saying that basically God sees us as His children, and when we sin, He still sees us as His children. It's possible that He could see us as His sinful children. When you actually go and have the sin forgiven, as in you actually just go and you're contrite, you go reverently before God, the all-powerful, and you get Him to vanquish the sin. God's not looking at you as His sinful child anymore. He's just looking at you as His child, because the sin has, in essence, been forgotten. And whenever we look at the people that have wronged us, we look in whatever they've done wrong. That's the first thing to spring to mind. We're human, and we do tend to focus on each other's faults rather than their strengths. God isn't like that.
The difference between our forgiveness and God's forgiveness is the whole idea of we can sometimes forgive half-heartedly, in the sense of we sometimes think that we have truly forgiven, but we think that most of the time when we are away from the problem. When we're away from the problem, we believe that I have truly forgiven this person. When we are put in the situation that we now have to face that problem, we actually realize that maybe I haven't actually forgiven. And so we jump to the idea of forgiveness too quickly without realizing that actually forgiveness is a stage. And since we are all sinners, it will not happen immediately, but it will happen over a period of time. With God, forgiveness is so natural that it just flows. If He says, I forgive you, He's not going to take a period of time to develop it and try and overcome whatever you have done to Him. It's just there. The idea of Him dying on the cross, He didn't take that period to kind of be like, I think I forgive them. I'm not really sure. Do I truly forgive? No, He's like, I forgive them. And when He was on that cross, He even said, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they have done. And that shows that, technically, He has forgiven us. And He's praying for our forgiveness too. So I think that's the difference between man's forgiveness and God's forgiveness. It's a stage, a period of time, and not one just happens automatically.
I guess as humans we can be quite stubborn and feel that if we've been hurt or been done wrong to us, we can just hold on to it and feel that we have the right to not forgive them and make them feel bad, but really it's just us that gets the suffering for it, whereas God can just forgive us like that. And we've learnt this week that if we forgive others, God can forgive us. And it's not just for our sake that he forgives us, but it's also for his own sake that he can dwell with us and get rid of our sin.
I think we as humans, we forgive, like sometimes because we want something, or sometimes because we feel bad, we feel guilt. So we forgive for us more than for the other person. Or, sometimes we forgive for us more than for the other person, but God gives with no self in mind. God just forgives us even though we don't deserve it. We forgive because we think we deserve it, or we forgive others because we think we deserve it, or it's when we do things, it's for us, whether we realize it or not sometimes. So God forgives selflessly, and God forgives with grace, and God just doesn't, keep record of our wrongs, he says.
I think the saying in itself is true. You can forgive, and no, you don't have to forget. But forgetting, or the process of forgetting, is so much more liberating. I think that for the most part, people confuse forgetting what happened with forgetting the hurt. I think we can work to forget the hurt that happened while still remembering the situation. It's just a human part of us that will remember a part of it. But I do think that we can forget the hurts associated with each situation.
Yes. I'd say yes, because I think when you reach a point of complete forgiveness and true forgiveness, where you completely give it to God and you ask him to forgive you, and you ask him, you completely forgive that person and leave that whole burden, the whole situation, the hurt in God's hands, I do believe that you can get to a stage in your life whereby when you meet the person, for example, who's hurt you, when you've truly forgiven them, that it's not the first thing that comes to your mind. The person will probably have to remind you about that situation for it to come in your mind when you truly have forgiven them. So when you haven't forgiven someone and you meet them along the way, you might then, the minute you see them, you instantly feel that pain that you felt like years before, months before, weeks before. But when you truly forgive them, when you first meet them, all you have is love within you because of your connection and relationship with God. Because when we truly are connected with God, we have the love that he has for man, the same love we have for our fellow man as well. So then we get to a stage whereby we don't truly harbor that hate or that pain that we have from that moment that person hurt you. So when you see them, you don't actually remember until that person brings it up or someone else brings it up. So I do believe, you can forget to an extent, but you're always going to have that history and memory of it, but it won't completely come up every time you meet them.
I believe that we can definitely forgive and forget, but we can forgive without forgetting. I believe it's because the situations that we go through, the ones that are not good situations that make us want to, those situations that we go through, that means that we need to forgive somebody. Eventually, with true forgiveness, even though it's something that's hurt us and obviously caused us a lot of anguish and pain, it's just eventually comes into another situation that we've been through, which lays up in our past as another experience. And if you're someone that believes your experiences make you, then that is something that you can remember. And at the end of the day, all that's going to do is build you to the kingdom. So, I do believe that.
To refer back to the point I made earlier, it's a case of the fact you can actually, if you actually forgive properly, you can get to a point where when you look at the person that has wronged you, it doesn't matter what they've done. As in, look at us, we basically killed God's son. And it can get to a point where you can look at the person that's wrong you, doesn't matter what they've done, because there's some stuff that people do that's just, I don't know, when we think about it, it's too much. But it doesn't matter what you've done, you can actually look at that person and not see what they've done to you, actually just see the qualities of the person, actually just see another one of God's children.
I've never really believed that saying was true, to be honest. I think that forgiveness, possibly like I said with the stages of time, once we have truly forgiven, it might still be there sometimes in the back of our mind, but that would bring up the question of, is that a full forgiveness then? But personally for me, I believe that if we have truly forgiven someone, what they did, that hurt that we felt before, would not affect us to the stage where if we're talking to them like 2 years, 5 years down the line, the first thing in our head, or, a few things that will pop up in our head is, oh, I remember that time when you hit me or you hurt me so bad that it wouldn't even come up. It wouldn't even be a thought. It would just be a normal sort of conversation. So I think that statement doesn't actually have any substance when we're talking about a true forgiveness.
No, I think you can, depending on the circumstances, it's easier to forget, and sometimes it's important to not forget, because you can look back at a time where God has helped you to overcome something. So it depends. It's good to forget so you can treat the person as you would have before, but it's also important to remember where God's brought you from. So if forgetting the whole situation means that you forget there's something God's brought you through, then I wouldn't recommend forgetting it totally.
I think we should forgive and forget. I think it's easier to forget. It's easier to hold on to it than it is to forget about it. But at the same time, we should still aim to forget. Like, we shouldn't just say, oh, well, I can forgive you, but I remember what you've done, I'm going to hold on to that, because that's not true forgiveness. But that, in the end, is human forgiveness. It's not God's forgiveness. And if we're aiming to be like God, we should forgive like God, which is hard, but we should try.